Welcome to another cozy evening by the fireside, where we dive into the most mysterious and chilling stories out there. Tonight's tale might make your spine tingle, so if you're into unraveling eerie unsolved cases, you're in the right place. Just a heads up, this story contains some disturbing details, so if you're sensitive to topics like murder or the paranormal, feel free to listen with caution. But if you're ready to explore one of the most perplexing and terrifying cases in modern crime history, let's dive into the haunting mystery of the Zodiac Killer. Before we get started, I'd love for you to join our fireside community. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and share this video with others who enjoy unraveling the darkest mysteries. Your support means the world to me, and it helps keep these stories coming to you every week. So grab a blanket, settle in, and let's get started. On the cold night of December 20th, 1968, in a remote area of Vallejo, California, two high school students, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, were out on their first date. They drove to Lake Herman Road, a known lover's lane spot, where many young couples would go for privacy. But what was supposed to be a romantic evening turned into a scene of horror. At approximately 11 p.m., someone approached their car and shot both teenagers at close range. David Faraday was killed instantly, while Betty Lou tried to flee but was shot multiple times in the back. Both victims died at the scene. It was a senseless and brutal crime, and at that time, it appeared to be an isolated incident. However, this would soon be recognized as the Zodiac Killer's first confirmed attack. The area around Lake Herman Road was a quiet, rural stretch surrounded by hills and trees. It wasn't a place where violent crime was common. In fact, it was considered a peaceful spot for young couples to escape for some privacy. The quiet environment amplified the shock that would later engulf the community. Investigators had no witnesses and few clues, and no apparent motive for the murders. But this was only the beginning of the Zodiac's reign of terror. Just 6 months later, on July 4, 1969, another couple, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau, parked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, not far from where the first murders took place. At around midnight, a car pulled up next to them. The driver exited and approached their vehicle, shining a flashlight into the car, temporarily blinding them. Without warning, the assailant opened fire, hitting both Darlene and Michael. After walking away, the attacker returned and fired more shots to ensure his victims were dead. Miraculously, Michael Mageau survived the attack despite being severely wounded, and later provided police with the first description of the Zodiac Killer. A heavy-set white male, around 5 feet 8 inches to 5 feet 10 inches, wearing dark clothing. Unfortunately, Darlene Ferrin was not as fortunate and died from her injuries. This was when the Zodiac's twisted game truly began. Shortly after the Blue Rock Springs attack, a man called the Vallejo Police Department and claimed responsibility for both the Blue Rock Springs and Lake Herman Road murders. He gave precise details that had not been released to the public, cementing the idea that this was a serial killer who was just getting started. Just a few weeks after the Blue Rock Springs attack, newspapers across the San Francisco Bay Area received chilling letters signed by the Zodiac Killer. These letters contained coded messages, brimming with arrogance and cruelty, and a promise of more bloodshed to come if his demands weren't met. The Zodiac sent out ciphers that he claimed would reveal his identity, but the letters also included a sinister boast. "I like killing people because it is so much fun." The Zodiac ciphers were designed in such a way that they resembled cryptographic puzzles, and the media became deeply invested in solving them. The public too was gripped by these cryptic messages, and soon the Zodiac Killer became a household name. The ciphers were complex and intimidating, with symbols and patterns that were designed to confuse. After intense effort, only one of the Zodiac ciphers was cracked, revealing the chilling message: "I like killing because it is so much fun." The first cipher was solved by a couple, Donald and Bettye Harden, and it read like the twisted musings of a deranged mind. The Zodiac described his pleasure in killing and hinted at his desire to collect slaves for the afterlife. But despite his boasts, he did not reveal his true identity in this decoded message, leaving law enforcement and the public equally frustrated. Donald and Bettye Harden were a modest schoolteacher couple from Salinas, California, who played a pivotal role in the Zodiac Killer case by successfully cracking one of the most infamous ciphers sent by the killer. The Zodiac's cryptograms were designed to taunt the police and media, presenting complex puzzles that were seemingly unsolvable. However, the Hardens, driven by curiosity and determination, managed to decode the 408-character cipher just a few days after it was published in newspapers in 1969. Donald Harden was a high school history teacher, while Bettye had a keen interest in puzzles, which became an asset in their attempt to crack the code. Despite having no formal training in cryptography, Bettye was the one who proposed that the cipher likely used simple substitution. She reasoned that the killer's messages would contain common English words like killed and "it" based on the Zodiac's previous letters and narcissistic tendencies. Starting with these basic assumptions, Bettye began to experiment with substitutions, while Donald supported her process, reviewing patterns and trying out different sequences. After days of tireless work at their kitchen table, the Hardens managed to decipher the cryptogram, revealing a chilling message from the Zodiac Killer. The decoded message was, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill. Something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die I will be reborn in paradise and those I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for the afterlife." The Zodiac's next attack occurred on September 27, 1969, at Lake Berryessa, a popular recreational area. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking by the lake when a man approached them, wearing a bizarre black executioner's hood with a white crosshair symbol on his chest. He told them that he was an escaped convict and needed their car and money. After tying them up, he suddenly began to stab them repeatedly with a large knife. Brian Hartnell survived the attack, but Cecilia Shepard succumbed to her injuries 2 days later. This time the Zodiac left a clear message. He wrote the dates of his previous killings on the victim's car door along with the now infamous Zodiac symbol. He then casually called the police from a payphone to report his crime, once again taunting them with his ability to kill without consequence. The Lake Berryessa attack was different from the Zodiac's previous murders in that he used a knife instead of a gun. This personal hands-on approach made the crime all the more chilling. It also demonstrated that the Zodiac was unpredictable and evolving, keeping law enforcement on edge. On October 11, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in the bustling city of San Francisco. His victim was Paul Stein, a cab driver who was shot in the head at point-blank range while driving a passenger in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. The killer calmly wiped down the cab, removed a piece of Stein's shirt and vanished into the night. This murder marked a significant departure from the Zodiac's usual pattern of attacking couples in remote locations. It also occurred in a heavily populated area, yet the killer managed to escape undetected. A few days later, the Zodiac sent another letter to the San Francisco Chronicle, this time including a piece of Paul Stein's blood-stained shirt to prove his responsibility for the crime. The police investigation into the Zodiac Killer's crimes was intense and extensive, involving multiple law enforcement agencies, including the San Francisco Police Department, the Vallejo Police Department, and the FBI. Detectives sifted through thousands of tips and interviewed hundreds of suspects, but the Zodiac remained elusive. The Zodiac Killer case has captivated law enforcement and the public for decades, primarily because, despite numerous suspects, the true identity of the killer has never been definitively proven. Over the years, several individuals have been named as potential suspects, but a lack of concrete evidence has prevented authorities from making an arrest. Let's explore the main suspects, the evidence against them, and why none were conclusively linked to the Zodiac. One of the most promising suspects was Arthur Lee Allen in the Zodiac case. A former elementary school teacher, Allen first became a person of interest after a series of suspicious events and behaviors. He had a disturbing past, including being fired from his teaching job for sexual misconduct with minors. His connection to the Zodiac began in 1971 when one of Alan's friends reported that Alan had mentioned an interest in killing people, even referencing the name Zodiac before the letters started appearing. Alan's home was searched and police found bomb-making materials, detailed drawings and maps, similar to some of the content in the Zodiac's letters. Additionally, Alan wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch, which featured a logo that resembled the killer's infamous crosshair symbol. Several people, including a former friend and a relative, claimed that Alan had privately admitted to being the Zodiac Killer or exhibited behavior that matched the killer's personality. Alan lived in Vallejo, California, a city close to several of the Zodiac's known crime scenes. He also owned a car that was similar to the description given by witnesses of the Zodiac. However, there were several significant reasons Alan was never arrested. Alan's handwriting did not match that of the Zodiac's letters. Although the letters may have been disguised, handwriting experts were unable to conclusively link his writing to the Zodiac's notes. Also, in later years, when partial DNA profiles were extracted from Zodiac letters, Alan's DNA did not match the genetic material found on the envelopes. Though DNA evidence in this case is far from definitive, it weakened the case against Alan. Alan had an alibi for one of the Zodiac's murders in Riverside. While the connection between that crime and the Zodiac remains speculative, it was another point that cast doubt on Alan's involvement. One of Alan's acquaintances, Bob Tarbox, a lawyer, claimed in later years that a man once came into his office and confessed to being the Zodiac Killer. The man reportedly provided details of the murders and expressed guilt over his actions. Tarbox, however, refused to reveal the identity of this individual due to attorney-client privilege. According to Tarbox, the man claimed to be the Zodiac and provided chilling details about the killings. He allegedly told Tarbox that he wanted to confess before disappearing entirely. This account has never been independently verified. Despite this account, no arrest was made and the alleged confessor was never identified publicly. Rick Marshall, a projectionist who lived in San Francisco, was another prominent suspect in the Zodiac investigation. He came to the attention of authorities due to his work in movie theaters and his fascination with cryptography, which some investigators believed was similar to the Zodiac's own fascination with ciphers. Some believe the Zodiac's letters and taunts contained references to film, particularly the 1920 silent film The Red Phantom. As a projectionist, Marshall had access to old films, and his proximity to crime scenes was seen as suspicious by some investigators. Marshall's handwriting was scrutinized and found to share some similarities with the Zodiac's. However, much like Arthur Lee Allen, the similarities were not enough to confirm him as the killer. Despite these suspicions, there was no physical evidence linking Marshall to the Zodiac crimes, and like Allen, his handwriting was not a conclusive match. No strong connection between Marshall and any of the Zodiac's known victims was ever established. Lawrence Kane is another person who many believe could be the Zodiac. Kane had a criminal record, including arrests for voyeurism and sexual offenses. Additionally, Kane had sustained a brain injury in a car accident, which reportedly altered his personality, leading to erratic behavior. Investigators were particularly interested in Kane due to his proximity to one of the Zodiac's presumed victims, Donna Lass, who disappeared in 1970. Kane lived near Donna Lass and had reportedly interacted with her before her disappearance. Some believe that Lass was another of the Zodiac's victims, though this has never been confirmed. Kane's mental health problems, particularly the change in his behavior after his car accident, led some to speculate that he could have been responsible for the Zodiac killings. His behavior was described as obsessive and aggressive, traits often associated with the Zodiac. However, once again, handwriting analysis did not conclusively link Kane to the Zodiac letters. There was no direct evidence linking Kane to the crimes, and like the other suspects, investigators could not prove he was involved. Other suspects emerged over the years, including convicted killers, former military personnel, but none of them could be definitively tied to the crimes. The Zodiac's reign of terror was amplified by the media, which eagerly reported on every new letter, cipher, and murder. Newspapers, television, and radio stations were flooded with coverage, and the public became obsessed with the case. The Zodiac Killer seemed to relish the attention, often addressing his letters directly to editors and urging them to publish his cryptic messages on the front pages. The Bay Area was gripped with fear, and the Zodiac's threat to kill a school bus full of kids sent parents and police into a panic. School buses were followed by patrol cars, and the police presence at public events increased dramatically. The Zodiac had not only killed innocent people but also succeeded in holding an entire region hostage with his words. After the murder of Paul Stine in 1969, the Zodiac's confirmed activities began to dwindle, though he continued to send letters to the media until 1974. In these later communications, he referenced past killings and claimed responsibility for several other unsolved murders, though these claims have never been substantiated. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the Zodiac case is whether or not he committed more murders than the 5 officially attributed to him. In his letters, the Zodiac claimed to have killed as many as 37 people, but many of these claims are believed to be fabrications. Nevertheless, there are several unsolved cases from the same time period that have been speculated to be the work of the Zodiac. Over the decades, numerous theories have emerged about the identity of the Zodiac Killer. Some of the most popular theories point to suspects like Arthur Lee Allen, who many investigators believe was the most likely candidate, though his guilt has never been proven. Another theory suggests that the Zodiac may have been a man named Lawrence Kane, who had a history of violence and lived in the areas where several Zodiac murders occurred. The Zodiac Killer has left an indelible mark on the collective psyche, not just in the San Francisco Bay Area but across the globe. The audacity with which he taunted the authorities and the media, his cryptic ciphers that still puzzle code breakers, and his seemingly random acts of violence created a reign of terror that resonates even today. What makes this case all the more chilling is the possibility that the Zodiac could have stopped or may still be out there living quietly, having escaped justice. Despite technological advancements and decades of investigative work, the identity of the Zodiac remains a mystery. The allure of solving the case draws professional detectives, amateur sleuths, and true crime enthusiasts alike. Many wonder if there is a crucial clue buried somewhere, a piece of evidence that went unnoticed, or a cipher yet to be cracked that will finally reveal the face behind the symbol. As we draw this chilling story to a close, the haunting question lingers. Will the Zodiac Killer ever be identified, or will this case remain an eternal mystery? The unresolved nature of this case ensures that it stays deeply embedded in true crime history, continuously drawing in those fascinated by the unknown. If one thing is clear, it's that the shadow of the Zodiac Killer will loom large over true crime investigations for years to come. Thank you for sticking with me through this spine-chilling dive into one of the most perplexing unsolved cases in American history. Your support is what allows me to continue unraveling these dark mysteries. If you enjoyed this story or found it intriguing, please make sure to subscribe to Chilling Fireside Stories. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you won't miss any of our future deep dives into unsolved mysteries, paranormal tales, and true crime horrors. And if you think you've cracked any of the Zodiac's codes or have your own theories on who the killer might be, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, stay safe, stay warm, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that remain unsolved.